But I'm also going to pass around what I use, which is this instrument right here. And I know that we're trying to teach efficiency and less instrumentation, but I really do feel like this instrument is worth looking at as maybe an instrument that you add to your practice. Okay, so this instrument to me works really well for, there's a big side and a small side to this instrument. And after I've filled it, I'll use the condenser and the ball burnisher. I'll condense a little bit, make sure that everything's in there, and then I'll use the ball burnisher and just kind of mow over it, right? So get rid of the majority of my filling material. And then at the very end, I'll use this. I'll use the Acorn, and I'll go in and I'll place it down there, and the big end I'll use for mainly molars and the small end for premolars. But I can just set it on there, and it like hugs up against this side and this side, so I can really, honestly, I just push it right through that, and it'll form this almost perfectly. Like, I'm almost done. I can just go in with my football carbide and just kind of polish off any flash that's there, adjust occlusion, and I'm done. I don't have to sit around and try and recreate the anatomy in the tooth. I can create that natural anatomy with this instrument right here. So I'll pass that around too. I like it a lot. So
also, another thing about instruments is I think it's really important to have your assistant hand you the instrument with the end that you want to use. So I use like the larger like ball burnisher condenser end first, like this one, to condense it, and then I'll switch over to the other side. And that goes for the plastic instrument as well. If there's a side that you prefer using first, instead of just having your assistant hand you whatever end shows up.
Just make sure you establish the sequence in your office and make sure that everybody knows that sequence, because it can become frustrating for both sides. You know, if the assistant's not quite sure and the doctor's like, oh, wrong side again, you know, in your head, and if you don't establish that sequence, then everybody's frustrated, and it just goes so much more smooth. We're talking about efficiency here, and it really does make a huge difference to be handed the instrument the proper way, direction that you would normally start. Adjusting burrs that we all do use in our practice, but with the exception of the football carbide, I think Cindy uses the football diamond. You know, it's just like, once again, just establishing what you use in your office, but this is what, for the most part, we use. So I'll adjust the occlusion with that football. This is the 12 fluted carbide burr that I'll use to remove flash. About the curing, 10 seconds. At my office, we actually do 20. We'll do 10 seconds buccal lingual, 20 seconds initial cure, remove the flash and everything, then 10-second final cure. Quick strip. I found it more helpful for my anterior composites with some of the techniques that Guy taught me to do some of the anterior composites. Sometimes you'll get just a little bit of a quick bond on the anterior teeth, so just popping that through real quick will help that, but seldom, but sometimes I'll have to use that in the posterior. These are just some interproximal finishing strips to help as well, and I'll mainly use those in the anterior as well. I don't really use those in the posterior. The only other burr that I really use is a greenie, but at the very end, this burr, unless it gets worn, is great for interproximal as well. So just kind of running that through right in between the teeth, just removing any extra little flash, and then run it over the occlusal surfaces real quick. Turn my handpiece down though to 10,000 RPM, something like that. I didn't initially, and you go through those really quick if you don't. I initially try and like half pedal it, but it caught when I got here, and it works well especially for posterior. I mean, run their tongue along it. It's not like an anterior where, you know, you don't want to have even the slightest little feeling of a margin. You want it just to be glass. In the posterior, this will polish anything that they could feel with their tongue, and it does a really good job. One thought when Brett was talking that I had was when he showed, you know, etching all the way up to the cuss tips of the teeth. If you don't bond all the way up, if you don't etch all the way up and you don't bond everything, much more likely to get that staining along the edges anywhere where you haven't etched or bonded. So just making sure you go all the way up and then bond past it a little bit, you know, and just make sure that it's all 100% ready. So spending those extra few seconds making sure that's all right will save you long term.
First, can we give everybody a round of applause for their teaching so far today? Thank you, thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about, from a dental assistant's perspective, I think it's really important to, whenever I hear of dental assistants that are just sort of relegated to a role of being like, okay, you can only clean rooms and suck spit, that's it, right? We don't see it that way in our organization. We highly value our every single one of our team members, and we look at it as part of the ways that you can grow your career is to continue to do things that increase your value. And basically, things that increase the value that you bring to the practice are the things that help the doctors spend the vast majority of their time doing things that only their license will, allows them to do, right? So for the doctors, they're the only ones in the office that can run a burr and remove enamel from a tooth, right? They can't, nobody else can do that. Nobody else can cut, nobody else can put in implants, technically nobody else